Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, post-match. Iga Swiatek versus Amanda Anisimova, Wimbledon 2025 final. If you're not here for spoilers, click off the video. Swiatek 6-0, 6-0. Wins her sixth major title, her first Wimbledon. It's a run that is going to be remembered for a historic level of one-sided dominance. Not only does Iga double bagel this championship match, she also bageled Belinda Bencic in the second set of her semifinal. 20 straight games, Swiatek won en route to lifting this trophy. It's the second time in the Open era that we've got a double bagel major final, Graf over Zvereva in 1988, Roland Garros. Second time at Wimbledon. First time was 1911. I don't even know what it looked like back then. 1911. It's also a real narrative twist for Iga. Hadn't been past the Wimbledon quarterfinal. But more notably, I think what some of these losses looked like at Wimbledon over the years. She lost to Elise Cornet. She lost to Yulia Putintseva. You got the sense that not only was Swiatek not making runs at Wimbledon, she wasn't very close. And then in the larger picture of her career, she had been, the stock, the ranking, let's just say, was as low as it's been in many, many years. Really, since the surge to number one after the Ash Barty retirement, Swiatek was 8th in the world 3 weeks ago, going into Bad Homburg, after failing to defend her Roland Garros title. She hadn't won a title in over a year. That drought is snapped at a tournament that traditionally has filled her with doubt. The narrative flips on its head. In one fell swoop, things change. The Wim-Fizette relationship, I think this is major for that coach-player relationship because I believe it was on thin ice based on how things were going. Now, another thing that changed, and these things are all related, last year, Swiatek said she didn't have enough time to rest after Roland Garros. She also said that, quote, she wouldn't make that same mistake again. So she wasn't just saying, well, I lost at Wimbledon because I went deep at RG. She was also, I think, referring to some decisions that were made with how she managed herself post-Paris. But this was a different thing altogether because with the quarterfinal loss, buys you basically an extra week. And they had a full 2-week training block, her and Fizette, plus they got to play a warm-up in Germany when Swiatek reached the final and started to get comfortable. So the runway was much better. The preparation was much better. And that is the first thing that you can point to when you kind of evaluate, okay, what was different this year that allowed Iga to do what she's never been able to do before? The other thing that was different this year is the pressure level. So even though Swiatek had to some extent struggled, especially just to win tournaments, finish tournaments for the last year, she still comes into Roland Garros as the favorite based on her historic domination of that event. This was the first major, really, the first major in over 4 years where Swiatek was basically written off. And she looked lighter. It looked like a weight off her shoulders. She got to play the underdog role for the first time in, again, a really, really, really long time. And psychology, as we're going to talk about more, can't be ignored. It's a powerful thing sometimes. You can't not look at the fact that for Swiatek and this breakthrough at Wimbledon, for a change, she wasn't number one in the world. For a change, she wasn't coming off of a Roland Garros title. And for a change, she had struggled over the course of the last year. So, the expectation level was totally different. Now, there were technical adjustments. She was playing flatter on her forehand. She continued to hold the baseline, but she also wasn't overhitting. She was keeping her targets smart. And watching Iga throughout the week, I felt as if she was playing very, very fast, but also keeping the errors down by shortening her swings when necessary, and by limiting kind of the changing of direction, and again, hitting the big targets, but keeping the speed really high. And I'm not just talking about the pace. I'm also talking about the court position. Swiatek's feet are so fast. I don't know if anybody has just quicker footwork than her. And that allows her, I think, to hold the baseline and also feel as if she's getting her feet set under her, and it looks like she has plenty of time on the ball, even though her position is so aggressive. And that's because her feet get organized, I think, quicker than anybody else's. That said, she was moving well. She was serving really well. She was returning well, starting points off and, jumping up on attack and making her forehand return on a more regular basis, which is something that got pretty leaky on her at times. But all that said, I don't think radical things were adjusted in her game. Certainly radical things weren't adjusted on her technique. Small details, sure, but nothing super drastic. I think the extreme variance that we were seeing from RG to Wimbledon was mainly mental. And at the end of the day, I never felt like that extreme variance made much sense. I actually went back to a mailbag that I did after Wimbledon last year, and one of the last questions in it was about Iga, and I just wanted to see what I said. And I basically said the results for Swiatek being so poor at Wimbledon, they cannot be explained. They do not make sense. I am not buying the fact that the Western grip on her forehand means that she can't beat Putintseva. I don't buy it. It doesn't make any sense. It was fatigue coming off the long clay season. It was a lack of confidence. It was a panic level. It was all of these things that were just sabotaging her ability to play at her level. But it never made much sense. I know, you have the grip and the spinny forehand, and that was the one thing you could point to. But other than that, it just didn't make much sense. And at any rate, the extreme variance just seemed like an anomaly. An anomaly not just with Iga individually, an anomaly when it comes to the overall landscape of what we expect elite level tennis to look like these days, which is that, and I've said this a lot, a 21st century world number one caliber player contends on all three surfaces. And you can give me one Osaka, you can give me one Medvedev, although he wasn't number one for very long. There are extreme quirks in his game as well, which kind of changed some things. But for every Osaka and Medvedev you give me, I can counter with the big three. I can counter with Serena. I can counter now with Sinkaraz. I can counter with Sabalenka, and how almost even, I know she hasn't won a major off of hard court yet. But she certainly makes semifinals at RG and Wimbledon. And now I can counter with Iga being a champion across all three surfaces. And I think this breakthrough will allow her to actually do a better job contending at the US Open and the Australian Open as well. I do not deny, again, let me be very, very clear. I am not saying that it's going to be that it's the same across all three surfaces for players like Iga, that it should be exactly the same. Not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that it shouldn't be so extreme. It should not be that you can win 4 Roland Garros titles in 5 years and you can't pass the quarters at Wimbledon. Should not be that extreme, is what I'm saying. All right, let's get into the final itself. We can bring Anisimova into this conversation here. I think this became quite psychological for her as well. I can't imagine the internal dialogue and how hard that must have been at a certain point in this match for Amanda. After you're down 4-love, after you lose the first set 6-love, and who knows, the thing swirling through her head, it could not have been pretty. She was certainly not being, I mean, look, you're just trying not to get embarrassed in the Wimbledon final on center court. And I think part of it is the aura of Swiatek beatdowns, the reputation that Iga has built as somebody who is going to potentially embarrass you. You start thinking, is this really happening to me? Once I lose the first set against Iga, like, is she pulling an Iga on me? Am I not good enough to avoid this? I think Anisimova really needed to win a game early. She needed to get on the board. She only really had a good chance to do so in the third game of the match when she was down love 2. But she missed almost every first serve down the stretch of that game, and her forehand was very, very tight. So it was second serve points. She was rushed on these first balls. She was having to defend way too much. I mean, her serve was terrible in this game, but that was the chance that she kind of had. Once you lose the first set 6-0, I also thought Anisimova played pretty well in the first game of the second set. And there was a little bit of a reset, a little bit of a push. And man, Iga played a really good game. First game of the second set, got it on the board. And then again, the flood of fear and negativity starts to come into play for Anisimova, who just never found the first serve, couldn't ever really defend with any kind of consistency, and the forehand was an error machine. Now, tactically, I think those were the two shots that Swiatek really took advantage of. There were a lot of shot selection issues for Anisimova on the forehand, especially going down the line. I think she made one, but she probably missed 10 or 11. And in the forehand patterns, Iga was just going to keep it cross, keep it cross, keep it cross. Good depth. Good speed from Swiatek. But Anisimova just couldn't stay patient. She couldn't help herself but try to change with that forehand down the line. She couldn't time it. ESPN did put up a Hawkeye statistic for Swiatek here. 53% cross court on the forehand, 20% down the line. Of course, the rest went middle. So huge bias for Swiatek to keep the forehand cross. And on the backhand, it was the opposite. She wasn't trying to hit it cross very often. She was going down the line as much as she could. Just keeping it on the Anisimova forehand because the backhand is such a gem of a shot. It's so good. And Swiatek said, I'll take my chances with Amanda's forehand. And it really paid off because the shot just never found its range. There was tightness early on, and Amanda never found it. The serve, Anisimova, 45% first serves in. She actually started going safer on it, which is bad in its own way. Swiatek was playing on the second serve. How would I describe it? The second serve return approach, fast and safe. She was reliably rushing Anisimova without taking on a lot of risk. Amanda was defending in most of these points, though. And let's see, she only won 8 out of 23 of her second serve points. That's 35%. She was actually lower on her first serve points, 26%. I did think that at a certain point, Amanda was just taking off her first serve and putting it in, which is a disaster because she needed to get the first strike in. and that wasn't happening. All right, a couple stats. Longest rally in the first set was 11 shots. Anisimova actually hit more winners than Iga in the first set, 3-2. Total unforced errors in the match. Anisimova 28, Swiatek 11. Tennis Insights in attack percentage. Swiatek 27% in attack. Anisimova 19%, way too low. Something interesting from ESPN Bet. I got it on a notification on my phone. Swiatek was a minus 280 favorite in this match. Largest favorite in a women's final since 2016, which was Serena versus Kerber. Swiatek winning the title with a 6-love set. It's actually the 8th time in her career that she's done that. She did it in the Rome final against Karolina Pliskova. That was a 6-0, 6-0. That's what I'm talking about when I mean reputation creates aura, creates doubt. Because when Swiatek does that to Pliskova, the whole locker room takes notice. She did it against Kontaveit in Doha. She did it against Osaka in Miami. I'm talking about a 6-0 set to finish. She did it against Vekic in San Diego, but that was actually a third set. She did it against Pegula in Doha. Laura Siegemund, no, that was actually a first set in Warsaw. That was a 6-0, 6-1 against Siegemund in Warsaw. In Cancun, she did it against Pegula. That was a 6-1, 6-0 in the WTA finals. She did it against Sakari at Indian Wells last March. 6-4, 6-love. So, as bad and disastrous as this was for Anisimova, as hard as it is to fathom that a Wimbledon final could be 0-0, Iga does this. Iga does this to players, which is amazing in its own right. I want to end on this. Just the fact that Swiatek didn't face any top 10 competition on this title run. I think it's misleading. Was it the hardest path ever? Was it a murderer's row? No. But I really do reject any kind of narrative that the draw opened up and this became a cupcake path for Swiatek. She beats Danielle Collins, huge weapons, massive hitter, has beaten Swiatek at a major before. Collins beat Rybakina in the match before. She then plays, I'm sorry, I'm getting Towson and Collins mixed up. Towson beat Rybakina. She plays Towson in the next round in the round of 16. Top 5 server in women's tennis. Hits huge off both wings. She plays Samsonova in the quarterfinals. Great grass court player. I think a former Berlin champion. Samsonova, top 20 player. Huge firepower. She plays Bencic, 35 in the world. Just not representative of how good Belinda Bencic is. Flat hitter who's been dominant on grass outside of Wimbledon. Somebody who I always felt was due for a Wimbledon run, at least to the final weekend. And finally it came. Swiatek beat Bencic easily. Oh, I should mention Bencic, somebody who served for the match against Swiatek at Wimbledon a few years ago, I believe. Had match points against Swiatek at Wimbledon a few years ago. And then Anisimova in the final, somebody who's now a top 10 player, by the way. And in 2025, she's been dangerous from start to finish, and it's always been clear that she is an immense top 10 level talent with an elite backhand, and she beat Sabalenka in the semis in a terrific performance. So I just think this was a run on merit for Swiatek, and I just want to squash the idea that things opened up for her in a way that made this Wimbledon title run in any way lesser. Nope. It was deserved in every single way, and it was as dominant as we've ever seen. So congrats to Iga and her fans. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.